Hi, I'm Kevin Kaufman. I'm the director of the Small Business Development Center at UW-Whitewater. And this is our first session of How to Buy a Business. We'll have 4 total sessions around that. Our first tonight, we'll talk about the mentality and the temperament of an entrepreneur, of somebody looking to start or purchase a business. Next week on Tuesday, we'll be talking about how to assess a business once you've looked at it, or once you've identified a business that potentially is for sale. How do we assess that business and how we value it? What is the transaction? What does a purchase look like? Some of the documentation that you'll need. And on our third session, 2 weeks from today, we'll talk about how to finance the business. And our final session will be a panel discussion of 2 to 3 entrepreneurs who have been in business or have purchased a business within the last 2 or 3 years, talking about their experiences and how it may differ from what their expectations were. So it should be a lively discussion, we hope, for all 4 weeks. And so tonight, our topic of the night is the temperament around someone looking to start or purchase a business. A little bit about my background, because I think it's kind of important. I've been at the Small Business Development Center at UW-Whitewater now for just over a year. Prior to that, I was at the Small Business Development Center at UW-Madison for approximately a year. Prior to that, I was a business consultant with Enterprise Minnesota for 7 years. Kind of a local kid who's come back. I'm a Jefferson High School grad, Whitewater undergrad, picked up my master's in business administration at the UW-La Crosse, and have worked in banking. I was national sales manager for a gift company, took them from a regional to a national basis, and as I said, have some pretty deep consulting. If there's a theme that kind of runs across my career, it's working with lots and lots and lots of small businesses. So I've seen that. My wife has owned and operated her own small business for many years, and my father owned and operated his own small business. So I think I've got it kind of in my DNA. We won't really be doing much for a presentation tonight. We're going to be more discussing. So with that, a lot of people come to my office and say, I'm thinking about starting a business, or I've identified to purchase a business. And one of the first things that we want to talk about is what led you to this kind of decision. And a lot of it is the mental makeup. Some of the things that I heard as a banker and continue to hear as a consultant are, I'm tired of making money for somebody else. I'd like to make money for myself. I'm tired of having to report to a boss. I kind of want to be my own boss. I think that I can do it better than the folks that I'm currently working for, so I'd like to branch out on my own. And as we think about businesses, there's kind of a couple of different buckets they fall into. One is kind of a tradesperson. Think about an electrician, a plumber, somebody that's in those kinds of industries that's really just kind of a sole practitioner. They really are, if you think about a one-person law firm, they kind of do it all. They're limited by how much time they have to spend in their craft, and then they've got kind of the overarching piece of I have to keep books, and I have to do taxes, and I have to bill people, and I have to collect, and all those things. But most of their time is really spent in their craft. That's kind of one bucket. The next bucket is really and I don't want to call it a more true business person, but it's certainly somebody that once you hire employees, your complexity goes way up. Then we think about that in terms of, think about a telephone network. When there was only 2 telephones, you only could call each other. Once you get 3 or 4, now you've got more permutations. You get 10 employees or 10 telephones in the network, things get a little more complex. And so then production comes into play, employee relations comes into play. We have to build kind of some infrastructure around the business, or take the existing infrastructure that's in an existing business and hopefully optimize it, take the best parts that are there, maybe add to it. So with that, kind of the core of what we're going to do tonight is around an entrepreneur assessment risk quiz for starting your own business, but quite frankly, it really works well for owning a business as well. So I'm going to pass this out, and then we'll kind of go through the questions one by one, and at the end of this we'll score, and I'll tell you a bit about how those things are scored.
Pass those out for you?
Sure.
Ooh.
So question one And this is about 35 questions. Question 1 says, what type of business do you want to start or buy? I haven't made my final decision yet. Whatever has the greatest chance to succeed and provide a good income. A retail, wholesale, service, manufacturing, construction, or agricultural business. So go ahead and put your answer. Pick one and one only, please. Second question is, why do you want to go into business? I need a job. I can't stand working for anyone else. To make a lot of money. To give me an outlet for lots of unused energy. Or for personal satisfaction and achievement. Go ahead and please enter one and one only answer for that. Number 3, why do you think you can succeed in starting a new business? I have the necessary experience and education in this business. I think I can make a lot of money in this type of business. I have a new idea or approach that nobody has tried before. There's a need for this type of business in my community, where plenty of other people have started businesses and succeeded. I think I can too. Please answer one of those. My business will be successful if I can just get a loan to get started, I can make an immediate profit, I can find a cheap location, I can satisfy a need, or I can create a new need. Again, please pick just one. And how many hours are you willing to devote to your business? Less than 40, 40, 40 to 50, 50 to 60, and over 60. Question number 6, are you in good health, yes or no? Question number 7, how are other businesses, like the one you want to start, doing in your community? Not very well, about average, very well, I'm not aware how they're doing, or there are no businesses here like the one I want to start. That's question number 7. The rest of these are going to be agree, partially agree, or disagree. Number 8, a really good idea sells itself. I agree with that. I partially agree or I disagree. Number 9, I think I should pay myself more than the founder, as the founder of my business, than I made working at my old job. Number 10, I am generally an optimistic person, and I am optimistic about my chances to succeed in business. Number 11, I think I should be free to run my business as I see fit. Investors and lenders should respect this and leave me alone, free from interference. Number 12, when solving problems, I look for the best solution and forget about the rest. When I decide there's something I want, I usually find a way to get it. If I don't find a way, I figure out why. I never plan on what I'm going to do tomorrow. Something always comes up that changes things, so why should I waste my time? If I were going to bet, I'd bet on the long shot with the highest potential payoff. Agree, partially agree, or disagree. Number 16, I like spending my time with my employees or fellow workers after the day is over. I enjoy setting my own standards and goals, and I work hard to achieve them. I am basically an easygoing person in my relationship with others. I don't push my opinions or demands on anyone. I don't like ambiguity, and I take action to find out what's going on. I work best when someone gets me going and provides some help along the way. I am going to hire friends and people I know to work for me. I think that's best because I know I can trust them not to give me trouble. I feel it is unrealistic to set lifetime goals because you never know what opportunities may arise in the future. When I know what I'm talking about, I can get others to believe me. The most effective way to solve a problem is to consider a lot of different alternatives. Making a lot of money is largely a matter of getting the right breaks. I enjoy playing sports and games with people who are a little better at it than I am. I like to impress people by showing them how well I can do certain things. I find that other people often waste my valuable time. I don't mind talking openly about myself with other people. Part of being successful in business is reserving enough time for family. If I were faced with failure, I would shift something else rather than seeing things through to the bitter end. If someone has legitimate authority, I don't mind following his or her orders. When I face a problem or task with which I'm unfamiliar, I am willing to listen to advice. And we're just about done here. On 34, I enjoy planning things more than I do actually carrying out the plans. And finally, I enjoy competing or doing things better than someone else. So we've gone through the 35 and we'll now kind of go through the scoring for it. For question number 1, give yourself 3 points if you answered retail, wholesale, service, manufacturing, construction, or agricultural. 0 points if you answered I haven't made my final decision yet, or whatever has the greatest chance. Question number 2, give yourself 2 points if you answer either I can't stand working for anyone else, or for personal satisfaction and achievement. And 0 points if you have I need a job to make a lot of money or to give me an outlet for unused energy. For number 3, give yourself 2 points if you answered I have the necessary experience and education in this line of business. Give yourself 1 point if you answered I have a new idea or approach that nobody has tried before. And give yourself 1 point if there is a need for this type of business in my community. 0 points for the other answers there. For number 4, give yourself 1 point if you answered my business will be successful if I can satisfy a need or I can create a new need. For number 5, how many hours a week are you willing to devote to your business? Give yourself 1 point if you answer between 50 and 60 hours. Give yourself 2 points if it's over 60 hours. For number 6, give yourself 2 points if you answered I am in good health. For number 7, how are other businesses like the one you want to start doing in your community? Give yourself 2 points if you answered very well, or give yourself 1 point if you answered there are no businesses around here like the one I want to start or buy. For number 8, a really good idea sells itself. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. For number 9, I think I should pay myself more than the founder. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. For number 10, I'm generally an optimistic person. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that. For number 11, I think I should be free to run my business as I see fit. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that statement. When solving problems, I look for the best solution and forget about the rest. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that statement. When I decide there's something I want, I usually find a way to get it. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that statement. Number 14, I never plan what I'm going to do tomorrow. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that statement. Number 15, if I were going to bet, I would bet on the long shot with the highest potential. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. Number 16, I like spending time with my employees or fellow workers after the day is over. Give yourself 1 point if you partially disagree with that or if you disagree with that. Number 17, I enjoy setting my own standards and goals and I work hard to achieve them. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that. Number 18, I'm basically an easygoing person in my relationships. I don't push my opinions. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. Number 19, I don't like ambiguity. I take action to find out what's going on. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that statement. Number 20, I work best when someone gets me going and provides me help along the way. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. Number 21, I'm going to hire friends and people I know. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. Number 22, I feel it's unrealistic to set lifetime goals because you never know what opportunities may arise. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. When I know what I'm talking about, I can get others to believe me. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that and 1 point if you partially disagree with that. The most effective way to solve a problem is to consider a lot of different alternatives. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that. Making a lot of money is largely a matter of getting the right breaks. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. I enjoy playing sports or games with people who are a little better than I am. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that or even partially disagree with that. I like to impress people by showing them how well I can do certain things. Give yourself a point if you agree or partially disagree with that. I don't mind talking openly about myself with other people.
You skipped one.
Oh, I'm sorry. I find that other people often waste my valuable time. Give yourself a point if you agree or partially disagree with that. I don't mind talking openly about myself with other people. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. Part of being successful in business is reserving enough time for family. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. If I were faced with failure, I would shift something else rather than seeing things through to the bitter end. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that or partially disagree. If someone has legitimate authority, I don't mind following his or her orders. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that. When I face a problem or task with which I'm unfamiliar, I'm willing to listen to advice. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that. I enjoy planning things more than I do actually carrying out the plans. Give yourself 1 point if you disagree with that statement. And finally, I enjoy competing and doing things better than someone else. Give yourself 1 point if you agree with that statement. So I'll give you just a couple seconds to tally up your scores. And we'll talk about them in just a moment. So as you can see, being an entrepreneur has a lot of different facets to it. Some of these surprised me. This was developed by the Minnesota Center of Rural Entrepreneurship, and they studied a number, I think over 500 businesses, and the people that started them, and some of these themes kind of came out. So if you've got your score, if your score is greater than or equal to 36, congratulations, you seem to possess most of the qualities and personal characteristics necessary to succeed in business. If your score is greater than or equal to 30, but less than 36, based on your answers, you seem to possess at least the minimum characteristics that past research implies are important in business success. If your score is less than 30, though you may have some of the personal characteristics necessary to start or purchase your own business, there are some you may lack. However, since this evaluation is based on the typical entrepreneurial characteristics, the jury's still out. Not saying no, Just there may be some weaknesses out there that you really want to pay attention to. So as we think about some of the things that we talked about, starting with, you're going to devote your life to purchasing this business. It's going to be your livelihood. And so, kind of picking whatever has the greatest chance to succeed, or haven't made my final decision. I think you really want to be focused, given the large chunk of your life that you're going to devote to this. So a plan is absolutely vital here. There are people that are very successful simply from a fear factor of not wanting to work for somebody else. But truly, it's that, consider that kind of the dark side, that I don't want to work for somebody else. The light side is for personal satisfaction and achievement. Walking in, being a part of something that you help build is absolutely rewarding. Needing a job is not a great reason to buy a business. To make a lot of money, I can tell you that many, many businesses start out that way. It's a hard slug. And to give me an outlet for unused energy, that sounds like a hobby to me. And those are the things that you should be doing. Maybe you want to build an airplane or something. So why do you think you can succeed? I have the necessary experience and education. Again, build your skills. I just was reading a very interesting article about a leader of Fortune 500 company, actually the president of A.O. Smith, and was talking about his employees. And they said, there was an employee he was talking to that said, I'm kind of behind schedule. I wanted to be a vice president by such and such date, and I didn't. And he said, more important than that, are you doing the things to, do you want to get there and be a lousy vice president? Rather than that, focus on the skills and the abilities that you're going to need to really be a great vice president when you get there. Same thing with owning and operating your own business. Focus on the skills that you're going to need to be able to do that. Business will be successful. Again, we use a lean business model canvas, which is a tool that helps assess ideas. And the first place we start is, tell me what problem you're solving. Tell me what problem that business is solving. Tell me how people are currently doing it if you're a new business, or how the existing business is doing it if you're looking at buying an existing business, and how are people doing it someplace else. Now, we had pizza tonight. There's a wide variety of places you can order pizza from. Think about that competition and how they segregate and how they change and how they set up their customer experience. I can go to Quick Trip and get a slice of pizza for a couple of dollars. Is my experience there very different from going to Salomon's, which is very different from ordering from Brick House, which is very different from getting a Papa Murphy's to take home and bake, which is different than going to lunch at Pizza Hut and having a buffet.
I have a question though. Can
Yes.
you have a successful business if profit isn't the ultimate goal? Because, so the idea I have is actually to solve a need in third world countries. I think I could make money at it,
Yeah.
but I wouldn't go into it necessarily for profit as much as I would be to satisfy
Sure.
a need. So is
So the
that
first-
still considered a legitimate business?
The first question we ask is, what need are you satisfying? Who are your target customers? Typically comes into number 2. And then number 3, what value are you providing to them, with the proviso, put this in big bold letters, that they are willing to pay for.
Okay. Or
And
that somebody's willing to pay for.
or that somebody is willing to pay for.
Okay.
So along with willing, I would also maybe add in third world countries, able. So you may have something that is a crying need there, but do your target customers, or is there somebody that's willing to pay for that, sufficient to sustain the business? Many is the time that I've talked to people buying a business or starting a business, and a lot of it they're talking about, and right from the get-go, I'm going to donate 10% of my profits to something else, right out of the gate. And my advice to them, and everybody that has trained me and talked to me, is their advice as well, is become profitable first, make those profits, and then you can. So typically, and I actually misspoke there. I've had places where they say we're going to give 5% of our sales, and so you're telling me even if you're unprofitable, you're going to go deeper in the hole to take 5% of your sales and donate, and who's going to be there? And your first job of business is to make the business sustainable.
Right, okay.
So I use the analogy when I was in banking and in consulting that businesses are very much like children. As you start a new one, it is just a newborn infant. It is nothing outside of you. It's a lot of inputs that you're putting into the business, and eventually it starts to take on a life of its own. And you see a business that goes through a growth spurt just like a teenager, and they're kind of gangly, and the infrastructure isn't there, and it feels kind of awkward. They go through those growth spurts as well, and it's very difficult for a founder or an owner when they're at the closing table to sell that business. They feel like they're selling a part of themselves, and that separation really hits emotional. I've actually been at closing tables where we've had owners break down a little bit or need to take a little piece when that emotion gets out of it, because you become, some of your self-image is tied up in the business, and that becomes very difficult. I work with many businesses that, and again, I've had emails come in at 2 o'clock in the morning. A small business owner, there's nobody else to do what needs to be done in a lot of cases. So you figure out what needs to be done, and you may be doing it at 10 at night, you may be doing it at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning, you may be pulling an all-nighter to make it happen. And those are some of the things, and that's why the good health question's in there as well, because it's very taxing on business owners to do that. The best indicator of a good business idea or good business for sale is that it's profitable and doing well, and that others in the community are doing well as well. I work in Whitewater. I can't tell you how many feasibility studies have been done in Whitewater about bringing a hotel in. And there's some limited service hotels, and they go up to maybe the low end of mid-range, but there's nothing above that in Whitewater. Feasibility study after the market has spoken. If there was a need there, somebody would have filled it by now. Everybody has looked, I mean, I shouldn't say everybody, but a number of people with much better knowledge of the lodging industry than I have looked at the numbers and the demographics and said, there's not really an unmet need here. There is sporadically, there is for freshman week, and there is for football games, and there is, but can you make a 365-day-a-year business out of just those high points? A really good idea sells itself. We see many entrepreneurs and many business owners that have kind of an engineering bend. And so my favorite quote is, I've invented this new widget, and a dog with a note in his mouth should be able to sell it. It's just not really the case. You've got to have a balance across your business of sales and marketing and financial and engineering and your product mix, all of those things. But ultimately, you're going to have to reach into your customers, whether you're doing business to business or business to consumer. There's got to be a link between your business and its customers, and that link is truly the engine or the lifeblood of the company. I think I should pay myself more as the founder of my business. I had a gentleman come in when I was banking and said, I'm tired of making money for somebody else. I want to make some money, quote unquote, of my own. And I said, every week you get that paycheck, that is your money. At your current job, or every 2 weeks, however often you're paid, that is your money. How long can you go without that? And I've had a number of business owners and entrepreneurs that you're the first salary that gets cut. You're the last one paid. You're the first salary that gets cut in a downturn, and build your life accordingly. I always say there's a continuum of business owners. There are those that, if they needed to donate plasma to make sure that somebody got paid, they would do that, and they live relatively frugally. And there are others that I've seen that maybe second generation or third generation, or somebody that's built and has kind of this lifestyle, and they figure that the business owes them that lifestyle regardless. And that's kind of a pride goes before the fall. I've had business owners that have bought, yachts and airplanes and have got a big fancy house, and as soon as the business turns down, their salary they're not able to cut in their mind, because these luxuries have now become necessities in their own mind. I'm generally an optimistic person. I think you have to be optimistic to be a business owner. If you thought you were going to fail, why would you get into this? One of the most common, and I've worked with hundreds of businesses, and one of the questions I always ask is, how did you get involved in this crazy business? The number one answer, I didn't know enough not to when I did. And if I had to do over again, I don't know whether I would have, but I made it through that tough period. But it's tough when you buy a business or start a business to get it off the ground and get your arms around it. If you buy a business, I always call it dust bunnies start rolling out. It looks great, and you've been on a couple of dates with the owner, and you buy, and everything's great at the closing, and then you get back to the office and the dust bunnies start rolling out. Somebody calls and says, "Oh, there's an invoice here that's never been paid, and you're the new owner, so get your checkbook out, or I'm not going to supply you with," and they may be a major supplier. I've had an instance where an employee was actually selling some of his own stuff into the customers. The old owner knew it, but it was truly a conflict of interest. And we've had other things where you inherit an employee that's been there for 30 years, and they just don't fit the culture that you're trying to create, and you're trying to do something new, and all you're hearing from that person or a cadre of people is, no, we tried that a long time ago, it'll never work. This is the way we do it because we've always done it this way. And so as you come in and try and change things, you're going to get some resistance. I think I should be free to run my business as I see fit. Investors and lenders should respect this and leave me alone. Guess what? Your banker is your partner. If you don't take care of him, he's not going to take care of you or her. Solving problems, I look for the best solution, forget about the rest. There's a whole school of thought around problem solving that talks about, and you brainstorm. So I'm holding a water, plastic water bottle here, and one company as part would set that and say, how would we build this? And people say, well, you get an injection mold, you take some molten plastic, and you blow it, and boom, you're done. I say, great. How would you build one of them, though? And I want minimum 3, usually 5 different ideas. Your first idea is rarely the idea that ends up getting implemented. So a good brainstorming process and being able to look at all of the options. We so many times get narrow focus, and we go, boom, I know exactly what to do, because A, I don't have time to really explore this, and B, just intuitively, I think this is the answer. Take the time to look at all the options and work on your decision-making skills. If there's one skill that's just critical in owning a business, it's being able to problem solve and be able to make good, solid decisions and be able to pivot if admit a mistake and pivot off of it. When I decide there's something I want, I usually find a way to get it, and if I don't find a way, I figure out why. Absolutely agree with that. Tenacity is just stick-to-itiveness, the ability to continue soldiering on through adversity. I've talked with many a restaurant owner, and if you put them in the scenario of, guess what, it's a Tuesday in February, and it just snowed 6 inches, and you haven't had a day off in about 30 days, and you're sitting in, you're watching the heat and the lights and the help, and there's nobody in your place. And how are you going to be able to soldier through that? So A, both financial planning, but B, that's just emotionally hard to get done at the end of a week and go, I didn't even make enough to, I barely covered my utilities. I never plan what I'm going to do tomorrow. Something always comes up that changes things, so why waste your time? So many businesses kind of go through the year and then they count it up at the end. Have a plan. I typically say it doesn't need to be a full-blown strategic plan. It doesn't need to be 3 inches thick and in a binder and have a million bullet points. But if you can pick 2 or 3 things that this year, if we do these 3 things or 4 things, this will be a successful year. It gives you focus within the business, and it's very easy. Typically, if you've got more than 1 or 2 people in the business, to lose focus. This person's kind of pushing here and this person's pulling over there. You've got to have some level of focus to get everybody kind of rowing in the same direction. If I were going to bet, I'd bet on the long shot. That's a disagree, because you should be risk averse, and you should take measured risks. Know what you're doing as you get involved with a business as to what could go wrong and what you're going to do if and when it does go wrong. There's a quality standard out there called ISO that manufacturers use. There's been a big change in that, and the major one is that you have to identify the risks in your supply chain, the risks in your customer base, the risks in that, and what you're doing to mitigate those. So what could go wrong and what will I do if and when it does go wrong? So contingency planning is just huge there. We see this many times. I like spending time with my employees or fellow workers after the day is over. They're your employees now. You don't get to be one of the guys and one of the gals. You've got, it's a lonely position being CEO of a company. I formed and chaired 2 peer councils when I was in Minnesota. And the major reason that those are successful is because those CEOs or those presidents and owners are the only ones in the building that know what it's like to kind of throw that yoke of responsibility on every morning and carry it all day long, and a lot of times into the night, and even when you go to bed. So to be able to talk with each other about, and realize that you're not the only person that's gone through these things. We had one of the neat issues, or I shouldn't say neat, one of the issues that came up was I was working with the owner of a foundry, and it turned out that his 30-year employee was part of a ring that was embezzling. They did a lot of brass, so they had copper and tin, and was basically short counting the ingots as they came in. And so they never came off the truck, and they were off the truck before they actually got to the foundry. And he was just devastated that this trust was breached with this 30-year employee. And then went and said, well, as you would, you get your dander up and say, this person's going to jail, and et cetera, et cetera. Ended up getting interviewed by the FBI. It was part of a ring that was tied to a whole number of foundries that had gone through this. And basically what they told him was, well, there was a guy in Cleveland that kind of pushed the envelope as well, and he just disappeared. So I don't know how much you want to do this, but he lost over 6 figures. The company ended up being fine. But those kinds of things can happen. I enjoy setting my own standards and goals. I think that be part of it as a business owner, you're really competing against yourself. You're not competing against everybody else, and getting just a little bit better on a consistent basis. Setting your own standards is far more important than measuring yourself against other business owners, particularly if they're in different industries. But being self-motivated, self-goaled, hugely important. Basically, easygoing person in my relationships with others. I don't push my opinions or demands on anyone. You're going to have to. You'll have problem suppliers. You'll have problem employees. You'll have problem customers. If you get into this to want to be the nice guy that is willing to give a refund at the drop of a hat, you need to set some standards around it, or people will take advantage of you. I'm working with a client right now that the owner is just the nicest guy you'd ever want to meet. And as we've tried to push the company along, basically the employees are running the business far more than they should. And so I show up 3 weeks later and I say, what's gotten done along here? And they say, well, nothing. We decided we weren't going to do that. So you're going to be in a position where you're going to need to be firm but fair. I don't like ambiguity and take action to find out what's going on. Absolutely. You will hear in employee situations, in supplier situations, in customer situations, you're gonna get one side of the story first. And that may or may not be true, but to take a full view around that. I work best when someone gets me going and provides help along the way. Again, if you're a self-starter, you've got a good shot in business. If you're not, that external discipline of having a place to go. I was home-based as a consultant up in Minnesota, and we used to get together and talk, and we had some people that just couldn't make that transition. Again, it's around that self-discipline, that there's nobody there saying you have to punch in at this time, and you have to, if you can't set your own goals and self-start, you'll just kind of fritter on the vine there. I'm gonna hire friends or people I know to work for me. I can't tell you how many times I've been through that, where families, I'm gonna hire my brother-in-law, or I'm gonna hire, we go back 30 years, I trust this person. That changes when their livelihood is dependent on you and your business is dependent on them. It can change that relationship, and you have a high risk of losing a friend and or losing some major business. I feel it's unrealistic to set lifetime goals. Again, disagree. You've got to have some level of a plan on where you want to go. I'm a big fan of mission, vision, and values. So mission is, why does this business exist? Vision is, what do we want to become? And values are, what do I expect everybody to do when I'm not looking? And so we work long and hard on that. I've been convinced over time that mission statement is not necessarily as important as a mantra. There's a great video out there by Guy Kawasaki talking about mantras. I have a client that's in Milwaukee. They've given me permission to talk about them. Their name is Olive Promotions. They do promotional items, hats, cups, mugs, flashlights, anything with clothing with logos on it. And they had a mission statement that was about this long, and it looked like it came out of the Dilbert generator. And so I said, let's scrap that, and let's come up with a mantra for you. We went through a process, whittled it down, and they came up with a mantra I just love, and it is your brand, our business. That's their mantra. Your brand, our business. Very simple. When I know what I'm talking about, I can get others to believe me. Absolutely. You're going to be in a sales position. Whether you're formally talking to customers, you're still going to be selling either somebody to come and work for you, or somebody to become your supplier, or somebody to promote, or a new business idea you have. Certainly talking with your banker will be somewhat of a sales call. You want your banker to believe in your business as much as you do. So you need to be able to convince somebody of your point of view. Most effective way to solve a problem is to consider a lot of different alternatives. Again, we've talked about that in the past. Look around, come up with 3 or 4 different ideas at least, and research it, and then make a decision and go. Making a lot of money is largely a matter of rate breaks. No, it's hard work. It's long and hard work around doing that. Many is the business that's been around for 10 years, and somebody will look enviously and say, oh, that person just got this wonderful life. They weren't there when it was in the basement and it was 60 hours a week and they were getting just their first go around.
I have talked to business people though. I mean, I might this one partially disagree, because I've talked to people who are like, I don't know, I just was in the right place at the right time, or
I'm sure it feels that way.
And these pieces just kind of came together. I know that there's that great quote that's like, when opportunity meets preparedness, or something like that. Success is when opportunity meets preparedness,
Yeah.
And I get that, but it just seems, especially in the world of small business, there
Mhm.
are so many unknowns
Oh, yeah.
that it's just kind of like, part of it is definitely work ethic,
Yep.
but it also seems like part of it is just,
Part of it is that, but
So-
again, think about the reputation of the business going into that lucky break. If they were not known for taking care of their customers, or weren't, trustworthy, or, we've seen businesses that have acted somewhat unethically. Usually, in my experience, that kind of comes home to roost. So it feels, and most small business people are pretty self-deprecating. So, oh, pshaw, not me. I just got lucky. They were, again, if you followed them around and saw them and did what they do, I use Tim Humphrey all the time. I'm going to use him again. If you followed Tim around, you'd realize how that business has built over the years, and the different customers that he's touched in different ways, and kind of built that clientele around. I enjoy playing sports or games with people. I think you've got to be competitive. I think there needs to be some level of competition innate to you, to hate to lose. They talk a lot about professional sports people, that the pain of losing is far greater than the joy of winning, and so they, in many cases, just don't ever give up till they win. I like to impress people by showing them how well I can do certain things. I think there's a real key in that. I think there's a piece of you should be proud to have my product. I'm not afraid to tell you how good I do what I do. That you should be happy to have my service, and I can with a very honest and straight face and trustworthy say, you're going to be better off by being one of my customers. I find that other people often waste my valuable time. Again, if you think your business is going to be, the He-Man Woman Haters Club that you're going to hang out in, and or the flip side of that, it's not a social club. We've got the business has to be sustained for it to last, and many is the time and many is the business that, particularly as a CEO, and what I hear from business owners is, I spend most of my days making decisions I shouldn't have to make. Somebody comes into my office every 5 minutes and says, I'm thinking about this, left or right, left or right. And to be able to empower your people and say, that's your decision, I know you can make a good one, but it's really hard to let go. Delegation becomes very difficult when you're the business owner or founder. People don't want to take risks, and they feel like my job's on the line to do that. And again, that's kind of a cultural piece. If you've run somebody out of the office screaming at them for making a bad decision, when they made the decision based on the information they had with values in mind, everybody's going to be in the foxhole. Nobody's going to make a decision. And I've seen businesses that can only grow from the hub and spoke, and that business owner sits at the hub, and they can, as far as their arm stretches, all the bigger the business will ever get, because everybody relies on that person. I had one client up in Minnesota, not client even, but I was brought in by the number 2 person and said, I'd like you to meet with our owner and talk about it. It became very evident that literally, if the paper towels were out in the men's room, that you go to him first and say, I'm thinking about replacing those, is that okay? And he was complaining that his business was stymied at this level, and it became very evident that nothing went out of the business, out the back door, to be shipped to a customer until he had signed off on it. And so, is that the best use of his time? Is that the best use of his employees' time? I don't mind talking openly about myself with other people. Again, it should be about your business and not about yourself. If you're, telling a story or coming in, a customer says, how you doing? And you break down in tears. Oh my gosh, I got this and this and this and this and this, and you can't imagine how tough my life is. And it should be about the business. Again, you've got social friends there. Part of being successful is reserving enough time for my family. I can argue this one. I think balance is important. I do think balance is important. And I think your family gives you, so I disagree with, they said here to disagree, and I think that families, absolutely foundational. The best business owners are able to strike a balance. You draw strength from your family, and they in turn support you in this endeavor. I think that's an important one. If I were faced with failure, I'd shift to something else rather than seeing things through. Absolutely, we call it a pivot. If what you're doing is not working, if the old story about if you're digging a hole, the first thing you do is stop digging. If what you're doing isn't working, start looking as to why. There's a great school of thought that one of our marketing professors down at UW talks about, and he says make a number of little bets and see which ones kind of pan out for you. So if you're thinking, should I go left or right, do them both at a very limited, low-cost way. Take a look at it. We had a client when I was up in Minnesota that made wind turbines, and they had two different kind of marketing messages, and so we basically set a stack of each on different ends of the table, and this one got about 3/4 of them gone, and this one had about 6 gone. So, guess what? We'll use this one. If someone has a legitimate authority, I don't mind following his or her orders. This is your business. This is your business, so it's great to get advice, but consider yourself as sitting in your own little Oval Office, and ultimately, and you will find that the easy problems kind of solve themselves, and other people within the company will solve them. By the time they get to you, they're usually a little more complex. When I face a problem or task I'm unfamiliar, willing to listen to advice. Now, the best CEOs and business owners are constantly growing, constantly learning, constantly looking for more. I enjoy planning things more than I actually do carrying out the plans. Huge problem we see in consulting. Oh, that's a wonderful plan. That's a great idea. We lay out action plans, and I come back 30 days later, and nothing's changed because I've been busy. That's innate to the name is busyness. Business is busyness. You're always going to be busy. You've got to be able to take time and work on the business while you're working in it, and it's tough to do. Finally, I enjoy competing and doing things better than someone else. Absolutely, that competitive drive is kind of a nice piece there. So it feels like, in my opinion, that the perfect entrepreneur is probably schizophrenic. There's lots of here, but what we actually find is that the best CEOs and the best business owners are flexible, and they're able to tailor their communication styles to the audience at hand. They're able to tailor their offerings to their customers and treat them differently in ways that their customers appreciate, and that they work with their employees the same way, and that there are times when they've got to have their sales hat on. There are times when they're really just there to listen. There are times when they're digging in to solve a problem. There's times when they're delegating, and it's always a balance. And there is no such thing as a perfect entrepreneur. And even wildly successful people, Steve Jobs was not a perfect entrepreneur. He was very autocratic and very tough on the people around him, but he had a very strong following within the business.
Are there any of these that are really truly foundational? Like, are any of these weighted more than the others?
I think self-starting, flexibility, competitiveness, and passion. If you are looking at a business simply because it looks like a good money-making venture, but it's going to require a ton of your time, the enjoyment of money goes down, the marginal utility of it goes down in a big hurry. And if you're truly doing something you hate, that's a tough way to go through life. But I think that wanting to win and wanting to win, being self-reflective or self-aware, so many businesses will lose sight of, lose track of their customers. I'm working with a firm right now that makes air purification equipment, And as we got talking, it's very clear that we've just been doing this for 20 years, and we think we're doing a good job, but we don't know why we don't know why we have the customers we have. We don't know why they like us, and we don't know what they like about our competitors. So that self-awareness is a real kind of key piece, and the ability to admit when you're wrong, and to be able to pivot or to change or to stop. That pilot project, one of my favorite stories around that is when photosensitive lenses came out. They were looking at them for automotive, that your windshield would automatically darken when the sun comes out. And they had spent thousands and thousands of dollars on it, up close into the millions actually. And they were just about to implement it, and they had a focus group in. And somebody raised their hand and said, what happens if I go into a tunnel? And the car company said, okay, we're done. It's a death threat. You know, somebody will have an accident and it'll be our fault, and that won't work. And so that's why you don't see photosensitive windshields on your car.
Any questions, Diane?
I see that we're at about time, so again, thank you. Next week we'll be talking about how to assess and look at a potential business for sale. Thank you for joining us.